Good afternoon. On behalf of the American Federation of Teachers, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, A Good Start to the School Year, 5 Things to Stop Doing Right Now with Amber Chandler. My name is Katie Gould, and I am the content lead here at Share My Lesson. I'll be your moderator for today. Now, without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our presenter today, Amber Chandler. Amber is a National Board Certified Middle School ELA teacher, and she's the author of the Flexible ELA Classroom, Tools for Differentiation, and the upcoming Social and Emotional Learning in the Flexible Classroom book to be released in October. Amber is a blogger, she's a teacher, she is a passionate enthusiast for helping other teachers, and we are so very pleased to have her with us today. You can read more about her bio in the upper right-hand corner on the speaker bio box. And now I am going to turn it over to Amber.
All right, thank you. Katie should be everybody's little introducer. She's great. I really am excited to do this webinar because this grew from a blog that I wrote a little while ago last year, and I'll mention it more as I go through, that it really drew a lot of attention. And so I decided that I was going to come up with these 5 things to stop doing right now. And you'll see on the side where I have this pretty please. Pretty please is because, you know, I've made every mistake that is in this webinar. I have done everything that is in here. So there's no shame in the fact that we've made mistakes. And again, not everybody's going to agree. I certainly enjoyed that part too, as long as everybody's friendly about it. But I think there'll be some things that you'll take away from this. I'm going to jump right in though before we start. And what I'm asking is what practices, and you can just do this in the group chat, what practices do you see in the classroom that you think should be stopped? Is there anything that you just know people do, and not you necessarily, but you know people do, and you just wish that people didn't anymore? So if you could just, any ideas you have, you can just throw those into the group chat. I'm seeing some good answers already, yelling at students. Yeah, I always tell people, don't pick up the rope. You're gonna lose. Yeah, you're gonna lose. Shutting down questions. I'm excited to actually ask this here because you'll see how your ideas line up with mine, and I think it'll be interesting. So you still have time to kind of jump in there. These are awesome. Everybody has a really good idea of where we're going with this. So the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is something that I did and I thought I was super cool. When students would come in, they would say, sit anywhere, and then my parentheses, because I'm cool and freewheeling like that. This was like my thing when I first started teaching. If I really thought that, you know, they needed freedom, they needed the ability to make their own decisions, and there I was, and I'm an outgoing person, I'm confident, probably sometimes too overconfident. So it doesn't really ever occur to me that there would be a downside to this until I had my own kids. That changed everything because my own kids aren't exactly like me, and my daughter particularly has a lot of anxiety about new social situations. And this is really where we just need to say, okay, look, we're not going to add to this. Social pressure is just off the charts. And what I did when I was making this presentation was I spoke with my students about it, and this is one of the things that Jamie, a girl in my class, said this year. She said, I like it when you give us different seats all the time. Then I don't have to think about it. I was surprised that I like some of the people I never talked to before, which is awesome that Jamie met new people, but more than that, my concern was much more the anxiety level. Like, how in the world can we expect students to learn if the first thing we're doing by, you know, appearing cool, which is exactly why I did it. I wanted to be like that cool teacher. And so I would let kids sit anywhere, and I wish that I could say I noticed kids looking around. I really, you know, you're getting ready for your class, you're not really thinking about it unless it's something that impacts you right away. And so once I started these seats, giving kids seats, and there's lots of ways to do that. I talk about that in my first book, a whole chapter of strategic groupings, because there's so many different ways to do it. There's ways you can do it through random groupings with, you know, different popsicle sticks, or your triangle, circle, square, and however you arrange your room, there's ways to do it randomly. There's ways to do it deliberately by ability. And sometimes we do want ability groups. I know sometimes that's like a taboo. Sometimes we do need kids together so that I can do many lessons while other groups are working. So long story short, this first one really is one that I struggled with for a long time. And it does take some work up front so you know what to do, what the next thing is, to make sure that you have seating. But I think that I want to show you something that I think might help you to understand where I'm coming from. If you've never seen this, I think you are going to be, like me, very moved by it. I want to take a few minutes to watch the video. It is like 4 or 5 minutes. I show this during the first month of school, and teens are very honest and emotional about how school is very overwhelming to them. As teachers, we have to do our best not to contribute to the problems, and I feel like a lot of times the pressures and the problems are actually from teachers, are the cause of a lot of stress. And so the first example of not knowing where to sit is just one of them. But I want to jump in and watch the video. And again, it'll be a few minutes, well worth your time, I think. So I'm gonna just kind of mute myself, let you watch the video, and then we'll jump in with some questions.
Today, I found the truth.
Good morning, class. In today's lesson, we will be speaking about Plato's allegory of the cave. In Plato's allegory, he talks about human beings living in a cave. All their life, from their childhood, they've been chained up in such a way that they cannot move their bodies, and all they can see in front of them is a dark wall. Because they have never been outside of this cave, all they know about life is this dark wall. However, one day, a slave is released, and he discovers a whole new world outside of the cave. And because he is now the enlightened one, his job is to come and free those that are still trapped in the cave.
Look, think about it like this. The front row consists of kings, bishops, queens, pretty much the people in charge of the country. The second row is made up of pawns. The pawns are the least important and are pretty much what the leaders use to protect and benefit themselves. They're meant to be used for your own advantage.
Don't forget your red mask. Put it on. And now I pass you on to Carla with the segment on the terrors of originality.
It's a red card.
Today, the truth found me.
All right, everybody. I just pushed you a poll question. The link in the video, I will post that. I will take a look at that. Poll question, how many youth have a reported anxiety disorder in the U.S.? So the idea here that I want you to look at is, we all have anxiety. We all have different levels of anxiety. And this is a reported anxiety disorder in the U.S., so what your number would be. So go ahead and pick your number. There was a question, Marcus asked, what is the purpose of the mask? The mask, and after you watched the video for a little while, you probably kind of figured it out a little bit. The mask is really what we do all the time. I'm doing it here. I'm at home, and my son's downstairs, and if he came bursting in the room right now and my dog was barking or something happened, then I would be really putting down my mask of presenter, teacher, mother, and I wouldn't want that crack in my mask, and most people don't. And so that's sort of the purpose of the mask. Let's take a look at what you guys thought. How many of you have a reported anxiety disorder? I'll also add that I think a lot of people are unreported. We all know mental health issues are really, really big in schools, not something that we always see. So I think that if you look at this, Shiloh just said some interesting things about the mask too. So if you take a look in the group chat. Those of you who did say 8%, that is correct. This is only diagnosed cases. So that, I think it's really important to note too. So these only diagnosed cases of real anxiety around things like putting them on the spot. So what do you do about this? And I mentioned this, the flexible classroom solution, you're going to hear me talk about my flexible classroom. That's how I talk about what I do in my room and my philosophy. Organize for optimal seating choices. If you look here, I have a table, and then each chair has a number, and then there is a shape as well. So I can tell people to go to Jerry's table, or I can tell people to go to seat 37, or I can tell people to go, sit at a chair with a triangle. I have lots of ways of making it easier for students and me to feel less stressed about leaving anyone out. And there's a lot of ways I do this. There's different reasons I do it. Sometimes I put kids together. I put kids together who need to work together that I know are great together. Sometimes it's just to separate people. We all know that sometimes people are disruptive. So it has those methods, but also one of the things I talk about quite a bit in the book is that it really does help with the anxiety, but it helps with being able to really narrow down what we want to teach. The second thing, and this is like the beginning of it all. I wrote this blog, the one you're going to hear a little bit about here, and that is the grading students on responsibility. And I add in here, especially on their ability to purchase anything. Absolutely, you cannot do this. There are so many reasons this is complicated. I'm a big proponent of paying attention to people's socioeconomic status in ways that we ignore typically. And I'll tell you my little story here. You'll need a yellow plastic folder with metal fasteners, Crayola markers, and all of this signed by tomorrow. It's a homework grade. This is absolutely crippling for some kids, and a lot of kids are not the least bit interested in faking it or telling you the real reason why they don't have their supplies. They will just, they won't have them and will think they're irresponsible. That is not even usually the case. Most of the time, that's not the case. what we need to do is stop grading kids on things that have to do with responsibility that are not within their realm. This actually, true story, Kennedy was one of my students. I did change her name in this case and the other teacher's name because this is for real. When you talked to Mrs. W, she gave me a 0 because I didn't bring in a box of tissues. My mom flat out said she wasn't going to buy them. Now I have a 0 for a homework grade, which is ludicrous. And I did talk to the teacher, and I wasn't particularly nice about it. I went in and said, obviously you can't be grading her on a tissue. And the teacher kind of backed down, but I know full well she was. This fourth grade supply list, I know it's probably not super clear. This was actually my child's fourth grade supply list, and it cost about $200 for me to purchase these things. And one of the complications I ran into is this ability for me to even find these things. I spent an hour looking for the folders that I needed to have and the things like that. So many people can't afford it. So many people can't afford the timing. And in Kennedy's case, her mom was just like, no, I'm not doing that. That's ridiculous. In that case, then a kid is being punished for their parents. So we have to stop with the responsibility. Poll question number 2, how much money, I think I may have just given you the answer, except oh, this is a different one. Sorry about that. How much money do you think my daughter's back to school list is to the right? I changed it, sorry, I had the middle level. Assuming I bought middle level products. So this means that, what do you think? Do you think that, and this is me buying not all name brands, and I gave my answer away so you can jump in there, but you'll see that my answer is high, so you can put in whatever you want. So sorry I jumped in there. Maybe you can think about how much money do you think maybe you should be paying. Again, you can put your number in. Sorry, I jumped the gun on that one. But it honestly just gets me so fired up when I think about it and how many times I see teachers grade for responsibility on this. I wrote a blog about it, and I got tons of feedback, tons and tons of feedback, and tons of feedback that some of it was positive, a lot of it was negative. And one of the negative things was, well, you know what, how are we supposed to handle this problem? What are we going to do about it? So let's do what you guys said since I jumped the gun and told you. Yeah, that was $110 for that was the fourth grade year. I had originally had the middle school year because middle school it was $200. So it actually went up in that amount of time. Again, ridiculous expectations of students. So there's some solutions. These are my solutions, flexible classroom solutions. Allow students to use what they have or have to buy for other classes. I'm sure most of you know that people require all kinds of stuff. And as long as I'm very flexible about it and say, you know, use what you need, and I typically say, I typically say to students, you know what, if you have extras of this, bring what you have, take what you need. I have a supply table in my room, and kids drop things off, kids borrow things. We never have conversations about this from the beginning. Yeah, I really do. We don't really, in the beginning I say, hey, I know how this is. Classroom supplies are expensive. I don't want anybody to ever worry about it. And so what people do instead is that I'll say, if a kid says to me, oh, there's no more, 90-sheet notebooks in the back. Well, that's what the kid's really telling me, that they don't have a 90-sheet notebook. So it allows me to find out what a specific kid needs without them having to embarrass themselves or feel like they are standing out. Classroom supplies, I get $125, and I have to use school specialty, which is definitely, it's definitely limiting in many ways. I allow kids to shop after school starts. Lots of times what happens is that things go on deep discount, so I make sure they know that I make sure that they know they don't have to have their supplies for the first day of class. I'll say, whatever you think you need, wait. Go digital as much as possible. I know this is not possible for everyone. I have a almost paperless classroom, and so that's how I've sort of went around that solution. End of year donations from students. At the end, lockers are just full of supplies that kids don't want. I put a big sign on my door that says, donate your useful supplies here. This year I had probably 30, and I'm not joking, 30 packets of note cards that now are on my supply desk. So there's definitely that case. Donors choose. I haven't gone that route, but you certainly can. Talk to your principal, guidance, anyone who will listen. And again, it really is as many people as you possibly can. get them to hear the problem and get them to help you try to solve it. The more we make them aware. Naomi asked, so how should school district schools, classroom teachers address student materials? It is true that we need them. I mean, obviously we do need the supplies. Responsibility for work is another piece that comes in. I could honestly, and I think I have, I'm not sure if it was for Share My Lesson or not, I could give you an entire webinar. I do not give homework. I believe that if it's going to happen, it should happen at school where they can have access to me and resources, and it levels the playing field for people who don't have parents at home or don't have somebody to help them after school. One of the things that I do, though, is I make myself available during my free periods. Students are asked to stay after school. If they don't hand something in, I genuinely am asking them how I can help them to get it in. I'm not grading them and giving them 0 when they don't have something that they can't possibly have. So those are some of my solutions. This is my next one, and I hate this one too, and you guys alluded to this. I don't know if you're allowed to act like that at home, but I don't tolerate that kind of behavior here. Stop the shaming. And honestly, my answer is just simply, you are better than that, period. Like, that's it. There is absolutely no idea, no way that we should shame students. And there's lots of ways that we shame students. And it is absolutely debilitating. And there is a really, really big problem with this, I think, in that people want to make an example of a student, or if you let him get away with that, or you let her get away with that. Absolutely not. I tell my students, we will not have these conversations. I tell them I will praise them publicly, and I will talk to them privately if they have something. Absolutely cannot shame kids. Your turn. Now, this is flipping the switch a little bit because it's your turn. What is a behavior that you just can't handle anymore? Absolutely, you're done, and done. I will give you my one right now since I'm sitting in my husband's office and there are 2 fidget spinners on the desk. I'm done with fidget spinners, absolutely. What else are you done with? There's some behavior in your class that you just, you know what, you just don't want them to do. And it could be, something social, emotional, and negative. I see the kindergarten. God bless kindergarten teachers. That's a huge one. Is the behavior issues, and it's so hard to kind of do that. The clothes thing, I can't stand it when people are talking about each other's clothes. It makes me nuts. There was a big shoe thing about shoes after Christmas that I just couldn't handle it. Defiance, selling themselves short. I'm doing a really great conversation. Cell phones, I could probably do an entire webinar on that as well. Looks like some really good conversation about this, and so you can keep that up. But I want to jump in and talk about the fact that sometimes students who don't know the correct behaviors have to be taught them and not shamed for who they are. Address the behavior, not the child. So this is an example. This happened in summer school last year. I had a student come to me and says, I didn't know what pardon me meant. I don't know why he got so mad when I didn't do anything. I've never heard of pardon me. And as odd as this may sound, this was the truth. The kid didn't know what he was saying, and the kid also didn't even interpret what he was saying because the teacher ran together the words, pardon me. It was, pardon me, and the kid didn't move, and then the teacher got really mad about it. And the fact is, there's a lot of things that kids need to be taught overtly by us as teachers that they're not getting elsewhere. And that is certainly not the child's fault. And that's the really difficult part is when you think about it, what can you do when you see the disrespect or you see the complaining, you see cell phones when they're not supposed to? All of the things that we're expecting students to know how to do. And a lot of times being compliant, like school frequently requires you to be, is the opposite of what gets them credibility outside of the classroom. When I had an example to share, and it broke my heart. Kid had a really difficult situation, really bad year. He had lots of problems. Well, he ended up getting kicked out of school, and he was kicked out of school for having illegal substances at school. And when he came back to school, everybody clapped, and everybody kind of he was a hero for a little bit. And my heart hurt because here's this kid So it's the absolute wrong thing to do. And he and I had talked, and like we had spent hours together, and we're working on what he can do to change his life, all these great things. But when kids get validated for the negative behaviors, we have to be careful that we look at that. And we really have to be careful that we look at these are behaviors and not just kids who aren't worth working with. My flexible classroom solution, I teach behavior overtly. I teach active versus passive language. One of the things that I teach students is to say, may I borrow a pencil, not I don't have a pencil. When you just passively complain, people think less of you. I do a lot of role-playing scenarios before they're needed. We talk about asking to go to the bathroom. We talk about bodily functions. We talk about needing to go to the nurse. The last thing, kids may not really have thought about, how do I ask to go to the nurse? How do I ask to go to the restroom? Because they may not have done that. So being able to figure this out is huge. I teach everything in my classes. This is how we treat each other here, not rules or regulations. And those are my only rules, this little sign here. These are my only rules in my classroom, and I'm very flexible on almost everything else. And things fall into this category. Be kind, and there's always that. And I just tell people, Katie said that this is how we treat each other here. That I can't control what happens elsewhere, but I need to be able to control the level of civility that students have for each other in my class, and I really need to build a community because I do run a project-based classroom, and my classroom is paperless. And this year I'm integrating flexible seating. The flexible seating, I'm going to have bing bags, and I'm going to have chairs, I'm going to have a couch, I'm going to have tables. It's going to be really complicated to make this all run smoothly. So we have to have rules about how we treat each other. And we talk about those rules and we work on those rules together. Take risk, that's one of the big ones. If everybody takes risk, it's a norm. It's what we do. And that means that if you've done a PowerPoint for their first 2 presentations, well, guess what? You're going to try a Prezi, or you're going to try something different. So taking risk about being in a different group. Something like that. Listen actively. This one covers most everything. If kids are doing something, I simply say, I'm like, okay, everybody, we need to sit up straight. We need to listen actively. And that's so listen, everyone. It's not pointing these things out. Do your very best. And this is that thing, this idea that kids just kind of fly through their work or fly through whatever they're doing. They sort of mail it in, which is an illusion they don't even get. And so I tell them, I'm like, okay, do your best. That's it. And that's the expectation. Work goes back if it's not their very best. Everything counts. This one's huge. When the last time I taught this, everything counts, was how students walked in my room when they were late. I taught students that when you walk in a room late, you put on your fakest face if you have to, and you look very sad, and you look at me as a teacher and not disrupt my class, look at me, mouth the words, I'm so sorry, and then go sit down. Don't disrupt my class, apologize, and don't take over the center of attention. Once I did that, it stopped. It slowed down. It stopped, and then when people came in the room, I would say, remember, everything counts. Remember, everything counts. And when they do this, it's simple because I talk to them about that they're being judged. We talk about slant. It's a way of talking about how they sit up straight, listening, actively being attentive, nodding your head at a speaker when they're talking to you. These are all things about how we are explaining these in overt ways, not in subtle ways. Share, obviously, my room is sort of open to this. The last one, be your own hero. Every kid in middle school is going through middle school, and that's sort of a moment to take that in. Middle school was like worst years of my life. Horrible. Hated middle school. Can't believe I go back there. Everything about middle school is stressful. And one of the issues that really kind of comes out is sometimes you have to just like own up. Like you are going to have to do something that's uncomfortable. You're going to have to do something that pushes your boundaries. You're going to have to, you're going to have to square dance. Believe it or not, in my school, they have to square dance. And you're going to have to do that. And sometimes you're going to have to be your own hero because people aren't always watching. You're going to need to be your own hero when you take a stand. When you take the mask down, and I refer to that video all year, when you take the mask off, then you're being your own hero. You're making your own decisions. So this is one, people talked about this one too. I call this Stop the Treadmill. Me as a teacher saying this, I wish we had time to talk about that, but we're moving on today, so we have to finish this. We're out of time. So Stop the Treadmill idea, we should not cover curriculum. We do not have things we have to do. We must take our obligation to teach students seriously. The issue that I have is I understand 100% that we have standards, that we have curriculum, and that we have all of those things. But if it's not working, it's not working. And we cannot just stay on this treadmill. It isn't happening. And so one of the things that I really took to heart is kids who just like wanted more. And I'm not going to do this because I don't have time, but I really, if I ever wanted to get a doctorate, I'd like to write a dissertation about what we do as teachers to make kids hate learning. We make them hate learning because we shut them up when they're trying to learn. That's the hardest thing. This idea that we have to give up things. So I want you to think about for a second, what are you giving up? What is something that you stopped teaching or doing in the classroom that you love? And why did you stop? What did you do? I will tell you, initially, one of the things I stopped was poetry. Because poetry just didn't work. I couldn't fit it in. It wasn't showing up on my state test, so we stopped doing it. Now, if I feel like doing poetry, I will, and I'll fit it in. And I will tell you, since I have really changed to this flexible classroom viewpoint of my career and of teaching in the last 5 years, on narrative writing, I love narrative writing. I love NaNoWriMo, the National Novel Writing Month. The thing is that, you know, I gave that up, and, you know, my test scores didn't change with my kids. They didn't go up, they didn't go down. I'm not saying this is going to solve all your problems, but I am saying that students will change for the better when they are given those types of options. Is it any surprise, and this is where I guess my dissertation is that students stop loving to learn. We make it a checklist, and which is awful. I wish Liam said this to me about, and this is interesting, I wish we could learn more about fewer things. We just take the test and forget anyway. And that's huge, because I don't want any kids to do this. I don't want kids to take tests and give it up, you know, and then they just memorize it. And I see it all the time. I see it. That's why I run a project-based classroom. Again, that's a whole other webinar and book. But I use project-based learning because they remember it. No one remembers that great grammar test. That just doesn't happen. Poll question number 3, what percentage of teachers think they spend too much time on test prep? I'll give you a couple minutes to think about this one. I can't wait to read all of this group chat stuff later too. I'm jumping in as much as I can. Yeah, this is awesome. I'm really, really happy for all the conversations, because this is obviously, you can tell, something I'm passionate about. And I love to hear other people who are stretching and trying these things too. Yeah, teaching for the test, teaching to the test. It is very difficult when the bar keeps changing. That's huge when, you know, when the goal keeps changing. Yeah, and you know, most people have the answer that it's too much time. Nicole says, you know, too much time. I will tell you that this year I did not say 1 minute besides, well, I didn't say 1 minute anything about the test. Did I prepare them for the test? Yes. I studied the test and I figured out what it was to do. However, I spent one day going over the format of the test, and we never did tons of practice because I'd worked with them on how to go ahead and be prepared for testing situations. Go ahead and answer the poll question now. If you haven't, I'm going to push this forward so you can see what people think. All right, what percentage of teachers think they spend too much time on test prep? So let's see what your answers are. Looks like most people agree that most teachers think this. The time adds up. And if you look at the little chart here, very few people think too little time. There's a group of people who don't know, because they really don't know what they're supposed to be doing. 62% do say too much, but 27% do say about the right amount. And I'm hoping that about the right amount people are me, who are maybe a little later in their career, a little more willing to take those kind of risk and chances at this point. But the time adds up. It really does just sort of suck away our energies. So the flexible classroom solutions for me, and I mentioned this, is project-based learning. There's tons of work on the front side. I spend my summer doing this. This is big. I spend a lot of time. It's taken me about 6 years to make my entire school year project-based learning. Basically, I have a project per quarter. So every 10 weeks, I have a different project. the depth and breadth of knowledge students walk away with and they actually remember is just exponentially higher. Particularly that idea, it was huge, particularly that idea that they take tests that they don't care about. Classes are engaged, and when students are doing challenging work using 21st century thinking and tools, standards will be met. The standards aren't, and I think most people agree, standards aren't ridiculous. I just did a whole webinar on standards and how Share My Lesson is super awesome at providing the standards. I love to know what standards there are, and I love to address them, but how I choose to address them is up to me. And the way I'm always going to err is err on the side of student engagement. That's my big focus, and it has been my focus for a while, and I just see really amazing things. And I don't have some special schedule where my kids aren't difficult. I have 125 students over the course of the day. I also have, last year I had 28 of them were special needs students in some ways, and that's really complicated. I had behavior issues, I had all kinds of things, but my classes are engaged and people do this. You know, that's it. I really, that's the whole thing. I engage my students and they are all able to do really awesome things. My website, flexibleclass.com, there's lots of examples of my students' works. Every student on my team creates a website during the year, and it's a digital portfolio, and they all do it, and they're all interested in it because it's what they like to do, and they have to use all kinds of standards to do that. The last one is, and a lot of people mentioned this earlier in the group chat, like things that were an issue. Behaviors are just an issue. Again, we have to be careful. I definitely was guilty of saying something like this. Just because you aren't interested doesn't mean those around you aren't. Be quiet. Well, here's the thing. We have to stop assuming intentions. Students don't have irrelevant questions. Sometimes they really want to know something, but other times it's a diversion because they don't understand. The thing about this is we assume the worst, and I don't know why people do this. I just think it happens. But that's something that is really hard to think about, is to stop assuming intention. And I learned this the hard way. Truth time. We all have biases. We don't even notice. Is there one that you've had or half that you need to get over? And one of my biases, I'll give you my example, my truth time. One of the biases that I had was always kids who were late. This was an issue because I did not understand how they could not do this. I still don't know how they could not get to class on time. And it was always the same kids, and they were coming from the same place as someone else. And honestly, there are some kids who have, and my son showed me this very, very truthfully. He's in fourth grade, going into fourth grade. He has some executive functioning issues. Like, he has a hard time getting the right folder in the right thing and go to the right class. And what if he had to go to the bathroom? And I honestly, when I had my own kids, I just ended up with this different level, this different level of need that I wasn't seeing. And tons of times kids are doing things, get under your skin. I'd recommend that you don't let them see that. You talk to them not in school. And you do have to assume, Marcus said this, some kids do have negative intention, but I think that you're right. It's almost always a reason. It doesn't excuse the behavior, absolutely not. But one of the biggest things I would say, and Marcus kind of mentioned this, is the idea that it doesn't excuse the behavior, but then when you're dealing with the behavior and not the kid, it's a totally different access. Tardiness, lateness, not completing work, these are all things, obviously, that, I deal with too. I want to share this with you, though, that I think is important. So, students who struggle will do just about anything to deflect attention from that fact. This is what a girl in my class, Leona, told me. Her name's changed too, but she told me this year. She said, I'm the class clown in his class. That way he'll never call on me. He just tells me to be quiet. And that, shocked my system, I was like, oh, my gosh, is that happening? Is that what they're doing? It's really hard. And again, Crystal said that, students are needy emotionally. When kids are needy emotionally, or when they're masking their problems, if they don't have their gym clothes, it's not necessarily because they don't want to do gym. There are lots of reasons that they wouldn't do this. All kinds of ideas that you'll see that behaviors are the issue. We have to remember the child. This is one of my favorites, flexible classroom solution, and this is to realize that all behaviors have a social, emotional, or academic cause. This is super important. This is the topic of my book that's coming out in October, and it's a flexible classroom and flexible SEL classroom, and it's social emotional learning techniques to help all students succeed. The quote, "If kids come to us from strong, healthy, functioning families, it makes our job easier. If they do not come to us from strong, healthy, functioning families, it makes our job more important." And this quote like kills me because it's so true. I have kids that I know I'm the only person who's nice to them. I know it straight up. I know it because they told me. I know other, my co-teacher, my special ed teacher who works with me, she's the best. She makes sure that she says happy birthday to anyone who's having a birthday. And this is middle school. I'm in the 8th grade. She makes sure that she celebrates when somebody scores a goal. The beginning of my class typically is she and I, calling out all the good things that are happening for kids. And it is so helpful to look at this. It's really, really frustrating to realize that the very kids that most get on our nerves are the kids who really struggle. Those are kids who really seriously struggle, and they may not have a home life that's even worth mentioning. They're not going to tell us their deepest, darkest trouble sometimes. So being their person, which is something I talk about all the time in both books and in my writing, I talk about that. It's just so important to realize that you might be their person, their one person that they can count on. And if you can keep that in your mind, it helps so much. These are non-negotiables for me. These are my 5. These are my things that I really stick to. And we're going to kind of look at this. I'm going to wrap up shortly, and I have a few more things to say, and then we'll jump in for a few minutes of questions. What last thoughts do you have about non-negotiables? Is there anything you want to add? Is there anything that, here's my 5. Do you have a 6th? Is there something that you're thinking should be on this list? I think the list is probably a lot longer than this. But if you do, go ahead and put that into the group chat. I would love to see some more about that. Love to see more about that. So I want to talk a little bit about what I can do for you, and then a little bit for what you can do for me. My email is here. Honestly, email me anytime you would like. Email me anytime that you would like. I will answer your questions. This is what I love to do. That's really, this is what I like to do. I do Google Hangouts with people. Administrators have set up times where I'll do a Google Hangout for a faculty meeting. You can text me. My phone number's here, believe it or not. So that's really the case. I really do. If you have a question, let me know. You can help me. I can help you start a project that you're thinking of. Help you with your own writing. I'm super excited to say that I am good and finally reached the point where I am actually cutting back on some of my writing, and I was able to help a woman who is an ENL teacher take over half of my blogging responsibilities at Middleweb, where I blog. I can be a guest author for your book club. I can speak at your events, design lessons with you, help with curriculum. There's just a ton of things I can do, and I would love to do that for you. What I would like you to do for me, and then we'll jump into some questions, subscribe to flexibleclass.com. That is my website. I am in the middle of, not really the middle, I'm 3/4 of the way through sort of a new relaunch. Flexibleclass.com, you'll appreciate this. Katie put into the group chat, it was doyoudifferentiate.com. They're the same website. Turns out a lot of people can't spell differentiate. So it was a problem, and people were being redirected all the time. So Flexible Class, it's a little more branded to what I do now, but they're the same. It's the same site. But I am working on a relaunch because of the new book and some of the things that I want to do. Follow me on Twitter at Miss Amber Chandler. I blog all the time, and I'm kind of doing bunches of things with that, and you can jump in there. Encourage your administrators to check out my books. If you have a chance to do PD, I would love it if you would do it around my books, Flexible Differentiation from the first one, and then Social Emotional Learning in the second one. Encourage your administrators to have me come in for PD. I've just started doing this more often. I have one this month I'm really looking forward to. Share my writing on social media. If you follow me on Twitter and you see something that I write, put it out there. Honestly, that is really helpful to me, that my writing, it gets social media movement. if you buy my book or read my books, write reviews on Amazon and or Barnes & Noble. I have great reviews, and I love that, but it kind of is one of those things that happens, and then, you know, I need new ones too. So that's really where I am with that. I want to turn it back over to Katie. I'm sorry, it was like a mile a minute. I had a lot of things I wanted to jump in, and we're almost out of time. So Katie, do you want to jump back in with any questions?
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much to Amber, and thank you for all of our, let's see, we have about 165 people who've joined us today to talk about this, because I know it's important. I was in the classroom for 6 years, and these were things that constantly came up. And you know what? Not everybody understands. Not all the other teachers are, you know, can't get any sleep at night because they're worried about how am I going to get enough binders for my 150 students, because I know they don't have them. So Amber, thank you for talking about this today, and thank you to all of our folks in the group chat. So I want to open it up now. If folks have any questions, Amber should have enough time to take maybe 2 or 3. If you could, we've got one right now. Please enter your telephone number once again. I want to let everyone know, too, you will be able to download the slide presentation on your page. If you go up into the resource list, you can download. So if you've missed anything, you can get that there. Links for video. So does anyone have any questions they would like to ask Amber right now? You can either type those into the group chat or into the Q&A box, and I will get those to her.
She also wants to post the link. Sorry, the link to the post. I'm gonna put it on my. I'll just post it on Twitter after this. I don't have that link. You actually might have the link. I'm not sure if you can see it or not.
Which
for the
link
video.
are you looking for?
The video link, the identity, yeah.
I can look it up real quick. We are running out of time, so for right now, if we've got any more questions, please send them in. But I'd like to give Amber like the last 2 minutes, and please, if you have questions, we'll make sure that she gets to them after the webinar too, and make sure that you're in touch with her. But I'd like to give this time now. I see a lot of folks also love this webinar too. Amber, if there's a couple things that you'd like to share before we go, please go ahead and take that time. I'm going to hand it back to you.
Okay. Thank you so much. So this is, I love this webinar. It was really cool. I love the communication. I love the interaction. I'm not really interested in just saying all this to myself. So I really love that. I am not kidding when I say that I really do. This is what I love to do. This is one of my favorite things is to interact with teachers. I've been teaching for a long time. I've been teaching for, this will be my 18th year, and one of the reasons that I wanted to write a book in the first place was because when I was in the classroom, you know, struggling, I'm still in the classroom, when I was in the classroom and I was struggling for something, I found authors who could really kind of bolster me from afar. And now with like Robert Marzano, Rick Lamilli, there were just these great people who helped me so much. And one of the things I really wanted to do is to put that passion back into my own teaching and also to share it with other people. And that's how the book started. And that's how I blog. If you follow me, you'll see all the time. I probably have 2 or 3 blogs out every week. And it's just things that are going on in my life. I really appreciate it. My phone was actually blowing up, which is awesome. But people who are following me, people who are following along, joining, subscribing to Flexible Class, those things are great. And anytime you want to reach out, that is awesome. Again, the things that you could do for me, I mentioned. Really, honestly, it's just to keep the conversation going. That's what my goal is to make sure that that conversation is here. And then let me see. I'm taking a little look at the group chat to see if there's anything else. Polls not available. You can complete polls at the very end. You'll be able to see the whole webinar again. It'll be up again so that you can do that. I'll take this last minute or two to tell you a little bit about my book. I'm just putting my email in again. It's my name. Oops. And this, gmail.com. There you go. This is my name. And the website, flexibleclass.com or dodifferentiate.com. So here's the thing. I'll tell you a little bit about my book and the second one. The first one is a lot of differentiation. The second one really came to me. I received a grant last year about social emotional learning from the Novo Foundation, and I made a documentary and really looking into the lives of my children in my class were awesome. I was able to see them in a different way, and it really changed my thinking. And so the book happened, the whole thing. Yeah, the book happened the entire time. I went through as I was reading it. As I was writing it, I was reading when I was writing it, and it was just lessons that I was learning from my actual classroom. But when my book was for second and third graders, I've actually taught the first one, the flexible ELA classroom. I teach a class that's sort of a Twitter-based class on that book, and they go all the way down to second and third grade, easily make the adjustments. Elementary school teachers are amazing because they can just jump in there and adapt. The social emotional learning book will be awesome for everyone, and that's why I switched topics to a broader topic, not just ELA, because I really wanted to gather in as many teachers as I could into this fold of people who believe in a flexible classroom and stop the rigid and standardized education and really do something that's flexible for students. All right, Katie, you want to jump in there last minute? Is Katie there?
So
all right.
We've got great questions coming in. So I'm going to wrap things up. Thank you again, Amber, and for everyone today to make this such an amazing presentation. I know it's got me excited for back to school and in a really positive way. So I wanted to let everyone know, please go ahead and before we get off in a few minutes, you'll be able to download your professional development. It's on the left side of your screen. So if you've watched and you've completed your 2 required poll questions, you'll see that icon. You can click on it and download it. Now, if for some reason you were not able to answer the poll questions, whether your computer wasn't working or you joined us late, again, please do not worry. About an hour from now, you will get a link to the email you signed up with that will allow you to go back into this webinar presentation. You can watch it again or you can skip to the part that you need, but you can go back and answer those poll questions at that time, so then you'll be able to download your professional development certificate. Please do stay in touch. I worked with Amber, and she is just as passionate and amazing and full of energy all the time. So please, I really encourage you to reach out to her and create something fantastic together. I want to thank everyone again for joining us today, and we hope that you'll stay in touch, and just want to wish everybody a good rest of your summer or back to school, wherever you are on that journey. So thank you again.
Thank you, everybody. Awesome. Thank you.